Good morning, and a very warm welcome, he says, to CogX 2019 on this beautiful London morning in London Tech Week. Well, it may be cold out there, but we're going to get it buzzing in here. Thank you for coming, wherever you've come from. My name is Ollie Barrett, and it's my honor to be here on this stage all day, which really is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for coming. A few things to say about CogX. It is the festival of all things AI and emerging technology. It is completely back-to-back across 10 different stages. So wherever you've come from, you're welcome. Thank you. And I know what you're going to see today is going to prompt some fantastic connections between people and ideas. Now, as you know, they've put the investment stage in the red zone. I'm told that's not a joke, but it is an interesting thought to get us kicked off on investment, innovation, and the economy. We're going to be tweeting about this all day on CogX 19, so thank you for sharing, and please do meet each other before and after all our sessions. We've got a short Meet the Speakers session after every session on this stage, so if you want to face-to-face with any of our contributors, just follow the lollipop, and we'll take you to a nearby sheltered space for a short conversation. Now, you've come from far and wide. Let me formally introduce our first session on this investment stage. Straight after this session, we'll go straight into a fireside chat between Andy Haldane, Chief Economist at the Bank of England, and Anne-Marie Imafidon from Stemets. So there's lots to get through just this morning. Now, this first session, what a triple act. You have the CIO and COO of the London Stock Exchange. Two roles, one man. Chris Corrado is going to come up here on stage. Next, Manoj Saxena, my goodness me. CognitiveScale, its executive chairman. He's founded and exited 2 venture-backed businesses, all within the space of 5 years. Our panelists all know each other, and they're going to be chaired by someone who needs very little introduction. She's doing some fascinating work with the Royal Society on AI. She founded Founders for Schools and Workfinder, and also the Scaleup Institute. Chaired, but they're all friends already, by Sherry Coutu. Please welcome up our first session at CogX 2019. Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you. So my 2 takeaways so far: today's a beautiful day, and I'm standing in the red zone. Not a place where I want to be. My name is Chris Corrado, and I'm the CIO and COO of the London Stock Exchange Group, and I've been there for about 3.5 years. And look, it goes without saying that we are witnessing enormous change in our industry, the computer industry, as well as financial services, and it's at a pace I've not seen for the nearly 40 years I've been in the business in technology. It all began with large-scale computing, which then saw distributed computing create really an era of the empowered end user, which then extended into internet computing, where we saw the disruptive new business models significantly improving speed and convenience of commerce. And this really altered our lives. Now with the cloud really democratizing computing and further disrupting business models, further empowering businesses in our personal lives, we're now embracing this as really a ubiquitous set of capabilities. Again, improving time to market of products and services and our ability to really get things done. All this has led to a huge demand for storage of data, scalable computing, and high-speed mobile connectivity.
You had slides.
The world's interactions are really being digitized at really a dizzying space. So the opportunity lies with how we can effectively deploy applications that utilize analytics to make use of this data in ways that make our people smarter, enable faster decision-making, and improve the employee experience as well as the customer experience. Those analytics are being embedded in our applications and systems in conjunction with the new data and data streams we can now reference, and this really enables an intelligence we've never seen before at the computer substrate level. So bringing us to what we're doing at LSEG, we've been cautiously optimistic about deploying this type of technology, and I say cautiously optimistic because People come to us because they trust our data, they trust our systems, they trust our ability to manage risk, and we're a highly regulated set of businesses. However, we recognize that to keep up with market demand and the latency with which people want to operate, low latency, we have to make our people smarter and improve the jobs and improve decision making, as well as the customer experience to compete with those firms that are really concentrating on what it means to provide a really fluid customer experience. So we're taking these analytics and turning them into intelligence, for example, in managing markets. So one of our jobs is to manage the London Stock Exchange market as well as the Borsa Italiana market. We employ market surveillance to do that, to create a fairer market. To make our people smarter, we're deploying analytics and AI embedded in those market surveillance techniques to ensure that those markets are fair. We know we can't do that on our own, so we're working with partners to do that, as well as developing our own proprietary algorithms and using our own proprietary data to do that. So that addresses one aspect of what we do in one of our businesses. Our other two big businesses are data and analytics. FTSE Russell is a good example of the index business that we operate, as well as our large-scale clearing business, LCH. Those two businesses are also benefiting from AI. With respect to indexes and analytics, we're deploying natural language processing techniques, again, to make our people smarter, to improve the quality of the data that we're deploying. And with respect to clearing, this is all about managing risk and providing very scalable, very stable systems. Again, people come to us because of trust. And when you think about what we do at the London Stock Exchange from a mission-critical standpoint in terms of impact on the financial markets, clearing is the most critical thing. So any changes that we make, particularly as it depends on things like AI, have to be done in a very, very careful way. What we're doing to impact that area is we're automating the analysis and ultimately the intelligence associated with managing the underlying systems. So think of it as intelligent systems management. That's what we're deploying there. So as we started to deploy these techniques across businesses through proof of concepts, we recognized that we have to look at this a little bit differently and look at it from an architectural standpoint. So in looking at this slide, and starting at the bottom, we're effectively building a base set of infrastructure that now includes the public cloud, a software-defined data center. Think of that as a traditional private data center that connects in a very seamless way to the public cloud, and then ultimately embracing blockchain networks. And we're, at the moment, relatively agnostic to the particular implementation, and our main focus is not so much on the underlying technology. Of course, it has to work, and it ultimately has to be scalable, but really the business model that's being deployed by the use of an underlying blockchain. So being agnostic allows us to focus on the business models and what's required for those business models to be successful from a scalability and reliability standpoint. So our knowledge base has to extend across a number of different implementations of blockchain. For data, because data is a business for us, it's not just about digitizing interactions, we began focusing again on intelligent systems that improve the quality of our data in our what we call our ISD business, Information Systems Division. Some of those techniques and that focus is extending beyond that into the more transactional businesses, for example, clearing, as well as the exchanges themselves. And you'll see more and more us migrating towards the data type businesses as opposed to purely transaction businesses. Again, as we think about making people smarter, making people more productive, we have to really lay on an intelligence layer. However, more and more what people are thinking about is how can you be sure that the decisions and the recommendations being made by that intelligence layer are correct, given the fact that you know your data is imperfect at any one point in time, and some of your algorithms may not be perfect as well. So what we're doing here is we're providing much more transparency and audibility than would otherwise be the case because of the imperfect nature of this. And this is one of the key topics that we're focused on right now in our interactions with the executives at the company, our customers, as well as regulators. How can we make sure that the transparency is there, the auditability is there, so we can explain the recommendations and decisions? They may not always be 100 correct. In fact, they're almost guaranteed to not be 100% correct, but we can explain what led us to that conclusion, so there's no particular bias that's not at least understood. And that we think is going to be really critical in the future. In terms of automation and improving the experience, you have to implement an omni-channel set of capabilities, which means you bring together the various ways people want to do business with you, whether it's through an IVR, it's through talking with an individual, through the web, any kind of mobile device. All those devices and interactions have to share data, no matter where you enter and where you exit. And then packaging all that in the context of what we call a hub, the My LSEG hub, will create a new experience for our customers and anybody internally that's going to interact with this new digital operating system. Great. This just gives you some of the examples that I alluded to. Let's go back. Some of the examples that I alluded to in what we're making use of. One of the things I didn't talk about was bots, and I think of bots as, at the moment, less about AI and more about automation, automating tasks that would be done by people, and again, improving the quality of their jobs, not so much focused per se on eliminating jobs, but improving the quality of the jobs. If it turns out that we don't need a person to do some of that anymore, we'll just deploy them to some other area. And again, retrain them so they could provide other benefit to the firm. In natural language processing, I mentioned that we did a lot of work within our analytics and index business. In addition to that, we're processing alerts in our systems area to provide a greater level of intelligence to deploy predictive analytics that would prevent an outage from occurring. For example, with our clearing business. So understanding what's happened in the past, what may have led to a fault or a slowdown in the system, processing that data, sending an alert that says something may happen based upon the following conditions that have occurred, is what we're doing, for example, for our clearing business. So this is some of the areas that we're focused on now where, again, albeit we're embracing these emerging technologies, one has to be concerned about the potential risks associated with each and every one of them and get out in front of those risks. One of the topics we'll probably be talking about in a moment. Certainly with blockchain, to me, some of those risks are associated with the scalability and reliability. Like any new technology, a lot of instrumentation and monitoring is going to have to occur within the confines of that infrastructure, in addition to the fact that you've got to be, again, agnostic to any one implementation. We see ourselves heading in the direction of providing trading for cryptocurrency and ultimately digitized assets. As the investment area becomes more and more interested in tokenized assets, we're going to be partaking in that. I spent some time at IBM Research looking at their quantum computer, just getting a better understanding about when we think that would become commercially available at scale and at a reasonable cost, such that we can implement some of the techniques that you would benefit from in quantum computing, not the least of which is defending against some of the emerging cyber threats. For a mobile workforce, we expect the mobile workforce to be the dominant workforce in the future, and therefore want to capitalize on the advantages there. For immersive technology, we believe that this is very interesting in terms of the customer experience. However, it's not clear what the impact on people's well-being will be, depending upon the amount of this technology they use on a day-to-day basis. And again, for AI, the big issue for us is the ethical and legal implications that, again, I believe we really have to get our arms around proactively versus wait for legislation or wait for problems to occur that could impact our brand. Well, that's what I have for today in terms of kind of introducing a topic of which we're going to explore a bit more deeply in the panel. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Come and join us. So it's quite fun, and I guess sort of just on we've talked about financial services and how we use AI to manage risk, and I think with the what I'd like to ask Manoj to sort of open up with is what do we do to make it trusted so that we can also manage opportunity. So we start with risk, but let's also think about opportunity, and that's given your background in venture and also your background at the Reserve Bank makes a lot of sense, and some of your philanthropic activities.
Yeah, happy to. I think a couple of things. One is AI has definitely sort of shifted from, I call it research-grade AI to business-grade AI. You see people like Chris using AI around complex and core business processes. And as you go into these, I call it the shift from academics to economics. So as you go into the economics of AI, people are worried about how do I build it, how do I scale it, and how do I make it trustworthy? Because AI-driven systems are feedback-driven systems. They learn continuously, and there are no mechanisms today because everything we've built so far was rules-based, and rules don't learn. An AI system is dynamic, it evolves, and you need to have governance mechanisms that both manage your downside in terms of potential bias and discrimination or regulatory issues you run into, as well as, done right, trusted AI can actually build your brand. It can build the confidence that the customer knows how you're using their data. The customer knows why this insight or recommendation was made for me. So it takes a while to build that human-machine trust. And I think now that AI has gone into business processes, looking at AI both as an offensive way to build your brand, as well as defensive way to manage the downside risk that I think where the opportunity is.
Yeah. One of the projects that I'm working on at the Royal Society is about AI and how do we create and train many, many, many more people so that they know about managing the risks of AI, but also chasing the opportunities that come with that. And that may be at the university level, but interested to hear both of your views on what are you doing in your organizations to equip people to deal with AI, to retrain them so that they can use it responsibly and also protect them from not being taken down a garden path by someone who may be using it irresponsibly, because there will always be people who use it irresponsibly, but what do we do to protect ourselves at a company level and at an economy level?
Sure. One of the responsibilities I have as a COO is a unit called Academy, and Academy is a training ground, and we train external folks as well as internal folks. And in that facility, some of the training is mandatory training, and some of it's elective, if you will. And this is going to become more of mandatory training for new employees that come on board that understand it. There are some other things we're doing. We invite industry icons to come speak to us, one of which is sitting right here, and he'll be speaking at the London Stock Exchange Group on Friday for an hour, and I can tell you it's oversubscribed, so it gives you a sense for the interest level and what people wanting to learn and what the capabilities are, and one of the things that we want to make sure is they learn how to implement it in a way that's sort of safe and secure.
Yeah. I think I'd like to touch on transparency again, because I think it's very important. People get very excited about AI and then they think it's a black box. Talk a little bit about how are there standards that are being adopted at a global level, and how do we influence those? And with so many people working on this, because democracy is threatened by AI and so many other things, how do we make sure that we stay ahead so that it's trusted and it's a tool that we benefit from?
Yeah, I think this is an area that we are still very early on into. Just like when the internet came about, cybersecurity became a big deal. My view is with the advent of AI, cyber control will be a massive area. And we have been in the very early stages because 99% of AI models operate as a black box. and they're not ready for enterprise use. So a lot of big companies and small companies have invented individual tools to start going after facets of responsible AI. Data ownership, explainability, fairness and bias, robustness, industry compliance. So we are still in the early days, and there is a lot of work going on in the research side, but I think the chief risk officer and the chief compliance officers, my prediction is, are going to get a lot more involved. Microsoft last year in their annual report listed AI as a business risk to all their investors. Google followed suit. I think every company is going to start announcing to their boards that I have these little Chuckies running around with a knife in their hands, these AI bots and systems that are going to mess up my processes potentially. So I think this is a rich area for both commercial invention as well as research. And it'll take us at least, I think, 5 to 10 years before we can get a full handle on this.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about interconnectivity? Chris, you spoke about right data, right place, right time, and then you mentioned that we were, using, cloud and lots of different data sources from other places. Does that spell more risk or more opportunity?
Oh, it's of course a bit of both. On the risk side, there's a computing risk aspect where your data is spread all over the place, and there's this concept called data gravity that people are beginning to focus on. We have a multi-cloud strategy. There are 3 large-scale vendors, I'm sure you can guess who they are, that we're doing business with today. And spreading your data across those, knowing that your application could be spread across those, can create a tremendous amount of complexity. And you've got to be very, very careful about how you manage data governance and data security. Ultimately, my sense is that the data will migrate to the edge, and your computing horsepower may be in your own private data centers as well as in the cloud, and therefore your control over the data becomes easier if you keep it at the edge of your data centers and you're able to locate the processing elsewhere. But today, I think companies are in transition right now, and which is why for some companies it's been slow to develop. Most companies are not, of our size and magnitude, are very careful to put significant amounts of data in the cloud right now.
Yep. And Manoj, as a venture capitalist, very active in helping small companies become large. What advice would you have to them? I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience. What advice would you have to them if they wanted to use AI and get to scale, and perhaps partner with some of the other companies who are regulated, like the stock exchange and others?
I think the main one would be to not obsess about AI, but obsess about the business outcomes and the customer. At the end of the day, people like Chris don't care about AI. It's just a tool. I mean, it's a way of solving business problems. And I see too many people starting companies because they're in love with the technology. At the end of the day, what will make you succeed is obsession towards the customer and obsession towards driving business outcomes using technologies like AI and blockchain and others. So I think that would be probably my biggest advice to them. Focus on the outcomes, focus on building a good culture, focus on building a good team, and the rest will follow.
Yep. And I know that you also do some angel investing and come from an entrepreneurial background yourself. So what would your advice be to aspiring people who may be excited about AI and how they use it to get to scale and build trust in the banking sector?
Sure. I have a long road with AI. Believe it or not, I studied AI in college. The computers weren't big enough and fast enough to actually do anything with the algorithms that we invented. Fast forward, once we were able to start leveraging some of those techniques, and it really was as much as 15 years ago. My mantra was eliminate jobs with AI, and a couple of years back, having met Manoj, he sort of made me think about it differently, which is really, and I said it earlier, make your people smarter. If you take that approach, you'll take a different approach. You'll actually gain more absorption by doing it, because people will realize they're actually using better tools to get their job done so they can do more of what they're doing, or even solve higher order problems, versus, oh my God, my job is going to be eliminated by AI.
And we've got a couple of minutes left. If you had, again, you've got sort of 40 years, lots of different industries. You were, I was at MSCI, UBS, and you've come also from eBay and a bunch of other companies. What do you find, and we're supposed to be focusing a little bit on financial services, What have you learned in the other industries that you're applying now in financial services that makes them better and a really exciting place to be?
What I learned a lot about outside of the industry was all about the customer. When you're operating at an institution like eBay or a wireless company, I had 50 million customers at one company, and at another I had 150 million. So the systems that you deploy, the experience of the employee in interacting with the customer, as well as the customer itself, was very, very different. And this whole concept of omni-channel, when you're in a capital markets business, you don't really think about it that way. You think about servicing members or mutuals or a small number of customers. You don't really think that much about the experience. You think about getting them the data or the transaction. Whereas when you're in a company where you're servicing 150 million, that experience had better be really good because you could lose customers in droves.
Manoj?
Yeah, I think the biggest focus to me has been around how do you, again, look at, in financial services, I think AI will be as prevalent as spreadsheets are. I think if you look back at the last big transformation of financial services, it was what spreadsheets did to financial services. They augmented human intelligence. And I think contextual insights, contextual predictions is how everything from derivatives trading to post-trade settlement to customer acquisition, all of that is going to be augmented AI, as we call it, CognitiveScale. It's around giving you the personal Iron Man Jarvis suit. So as you're doing the work, the machine's augmenting your decisions with timely predictions. And I think that's the exciting time.
Yep.
But I think it's going to take a little longer than most people think. A lot of it is because transparency and regulations. So I would focus, and I compliment Chris for taking that business outcome, business risk view back into AI rather than a data and machine learning model out view.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you focus on customers and we accept that we need to improve the skills that are coming out of all of the systems and also help make our people smarter, then it will be a tool for good and it will continue on making financial services the best place that it can be. Thank you very much. It's now flashing red. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's been really, really fun. And I think the focus on the customer, we've all been in other industries, right, and part of our time is spent in financial services, and it's a great industry. Yeah. But we need to work hard at it to make sure that it continues to be great with AI. Anyway, thank you very much. Please join me in thanking.